I'm super excited to introduce our third and final speaker of the night. So our final speaker of the night is Matt Martin, and he is the CEO and partner at echosims Inc., and he is also a country music artist. So here's 3 fun facts that you probably don't know about Matt. Number 1, he proposed to his friend's partner on his behalf because his friend was afraid that she would say no to him. Matt sang her a love song to seduce her into saying yes to his friend. Matt released his first country music single in May. And in the past few weeks, it has reached top 40 on Sirius XM, CBC Country Channel, and it hit 100,000 streams on Spotify. And Matt used to love playing a lot of different sports, but now, unfortunately, he can't because he tore his ACL twice since he turned 30. That's a big fuck up right there. Matt, come on up here and share your fuck up.
Thank you, Marcia. It is good to be back, except this time in Toronto. I spoke in Kitchener a couple months back for the first time. I never expected I would stand in front of a group in ugly Christmas sweaters like this, and it's kind of cool. You all look really great. As Marcia said, I am the CEO of echosims, which is a digital marketing agency, and I'm an emerging country music artist in the last year or two. If you're interested in following along with my story, I'm most active on Instagram at Matt Martin Country. Please do follow along. Do I have a couple extra seconds, Marcia? I would love for you all to say hi to my fan base. I've been posting about Fuckup Nights the last couple nights, and they have no clue what I'm talking about. Why is a country music artist going to Fuckup Nights? So here's what I'm thinking. Who here likes Home Alone? Yeah. All right, on the count of 3, you're all going to say, Merry Christmas, you filthy animals, and a Happy New Year. You ready? 3, 2, 1.
Merry Christmas, you filthy animals, and a Happy New Year.
Beautiful. Nailed it. Oh, I need that. Thank you. All right. Oh, I don't want to give that away. So this is me. I was into makeup at a young age. I have no clue what I was doing there. I was very young. But a little background on me. I grew up on a 200-acre dairy farm in southwestern Ontario, and I was the middle of 5 kids. This is important because, as we all know, our childhood shapes us. And so for me, those 2 things were very important. Number 1, living on a dairy farm that was 200 acres meant that I was very adventurous. The world was my oyster. I can still remember of that feeling of, stepping out that front door in my bare feet and just taking off in any direction and building tree forts, playing in the creek, imagination gone wild. Whoop. We're back. And also being the middle of 5 kids, I believe that turned me into a person who loved people. I love people. I get along with almost anybody. But I also, even more, love to go off and do my own thing. I'm very independent. I'm very imaginative. I dream big. And so I'm a little bit of everything in that sense. By the time I was a teenager, I was very busy being cool, taking cool pictures in front of brick walls with my band. Anybody else did that? Any other? Yeah? Ian, a comedian. So at age 14, I learned how to play the guitar, and I fell in love with music. Instantly fell in love with writing songs. And so most of my high school memories are made up of friends, music, sports, not a care in the world about what I was going to do after high school. My parents come from the farming background, Mennonite background, for those of you that are familiar with that. And so I was never really pushed to think too hard about what I was going to do after school in terms of schooling and further education. So by the time I turned 18, I randomly accepted a sales job through a friend and instantly took a strong interest in the young entrepreneurs that were running this business. And that independent, curious nature of mine came to life. And I went home and Googled this and that, went down every little rabbit trail and ordered books and took programs. And 3.5 years later, I was still in this sales job, working a full-time sales job, and going home and working on something on the internet in regards to business, marketing, sales, you name it. I registered a business, I created a digital product, I built my own website, I ranked it in Google, I ran Google Ads, I sold some products, I lost some money, and for the sake of this story tonight, fast forward to age 24, I ended up starting a digital marketing agency called echosims, which you heard about earlier, still in business 9 years later. And echosims had a very big vision. I always have a large vision, but it didn't start very big. It started not in this office, it started in a small, shady-looking house in Kitchener, Ontario. I don't believe we ever had any of our clients there. And we weren't making money. It was a classic startup. There was no pool in the backyard. We were in California. And we had a big vision, and we were making some progress, but we weren't making great money, and it was slow. And because we weren't making great money, and we were all so young, we knew it was a bit of a long road. I can speak for myself, I had that sense. It was a bit of a long road. This was a service we were providing to other small businesses. About 2 years into echosims, I had a bright idea. And the background on this is that echosims started in the social media services space. So it was about 2010, and for those of you that can remember, back in the early days, in 2010, small businesses were being told that they needed to get on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn to engage their customers and stay in business and stay competitive. And because we were a bunch of young kids that were very eager and comfortable with computers, literally anybody that we met at a local networking night would turn to us and go, yeah, well, if you're confident to talk about social media, you're young and you get computers, so sure, I'll give you $500 a month to run our Facebook. And so this was the sort of thing, for the most part, that we were doing for those 2 years. And near the end of the 2 years when we came up with this idea, I was starting to realize that it wasn't really a scalable service that we were going to make a lot of money from, and I didn't really believe in it, meaning getting paid $500 a month to manage someone's small business social media. It didn't give me a lot of time to do a great job and to get in close with their business and put out great content and engage well with their customers on their behalf and to be profitable. So we were in this conversation of, shouldn't these people be doing it for themselves? Because if they were, it would be more authentic, they wouldn't have to spend the money, they'd probably focus on the things that are working, all these things. And we met another guy locally who was very experienced with social media and had a lot of great ideas. We were on the same page. So we decided we were going to launch this business called Mere Social. And it was sexy. Mere Social was sexy. echosims was getting a little bit dry and same old, same old. But Mere Social fit that startup vibe. echosims was like a service-based business. We're young techies, but that's about it. It was a small service-based business. Mere Social was a membership-based website where people would pay to access content that would teach them how to leverage social media for whatever their purposes were. They might be a business owner, they might be a salesperson. They could learn at this time when we started, it was Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. And we were pretty engaged in our local community. Kitchener-Waterloo, for those of you that are familiar with it, was known worldwide as an incubator for startups. And so we knew a lot of these people in that space. And as we started talking about this idea, literally everybody would be like, yeah, that makes a ton of sense. That's great. And because echosims was a marketing agency, and we had a whole bunch of young people that had nothing to better do with their time, we could leverage those resources to come up with some pretty cool stuff. So very quickly, we had that cute little Mere Social logo, so we'd show this to people. And we're like, what do you think of this idea? And they're like, well, the meerkat's pretty cute. It's a great idea. But no, seriously, people, and I think genuinely thought, yeah, that makes sense. I'm paying someone $500 a month, $1,000 a month to manage my services, these services for me, and I don't really know what I'm getting from it. So if I can have this super cheap access to great content that teaches me how to do this, that makes sense. So we got to work, and we started filming 50 pretty high-quality videos. It was something we were proud of. The quality of everything we were doing was great. The website we were building at the time was not mobile-friendly, but we were thinking about how we were going to make it mobile-friendly. And we had all these great interactive ideas for how people would work through the content. Like, you'd start with the basic newborn pup section and move into first foraging, and then yearling and mature meerkat. And you could download your tutorial worksheets after you listen to David talk about some boring stuff. And alongside all that, we were putting together some sexy marketing material. Look at the meerkat.
These days, everybody knows that using social media is one of the fastest ways to grow your business. The problem is, most people have no idea where to start or even how to begin. It's the Wild West out there, with experts acting like they know what they're talking about. Just because you know how to write a post, tweet about what you did last night, or snap a retro photo on Instagram, doesn't mean you're going to make 2 cents using social media.
We don't have to watch the whole thing. But look how awesome that is. So point being, everybody around us was watching us build this business, and it was over about the span of a year. So I was still running my new digital marketing agency, which was not making us great money, and it was growing. It was growing steadily. It was growing steadily, and I put it sort of in the background. I was super excited about this Mere Social thing. It was way sexier. Everybody's excited about it. It felt like it was going to be this scalable thing that was going to take off and give me more freedom. It was going to be this big success story. And by the time we got to launch point, we decided we were going to come up with a bang. So we set up this awesome event, and I'm probably a horrible event planner. I have to work really hard at that stuff. I'm not very organized. But I threw a pretty great party. And we threw this beautiful rooftop party. We had a DJ, we had live music, we had drinks, we had food. We had all sorts of business people come and local politicians. And we had the cool orange Lambo that matched the Mere Social logo. People could take pictures with it. And about a year later, after thousands of dollars of our own money that we didn't really have, and thousands of hours from a whole bunch of people that were getting paid shit salaries, we threw this party and we gave all the people there, which was about 100 people, free access to our new site with these 50 videos and worksheets, and we said, have at it, and tell us what you think, because after we hear how awesome you think this is, we're going to put it out there into the world, and you will be the first people to have experienced this business that's going to blow up. And then we waited. And we waited for a really long time. And I think there was about 2 people that logged in that had free access, that had all said this was a really great idea and it would be very valuable. And to keep the story short, we did continue on with this business for another year or so in different ways, trying to salvage it. What we realized very quickly after we launched this beta site was that there was another problem, and it was time. People who ran small businesses have a problem with time. It's very valuable. And so even though, yes, they may have authentically been telling us that this seemed beneficial to them and seemed affordable and the right path to go down, they weren't willing to make the time to dive in and watch all these videos and learn more about computers, and hopefully it will help their businesses succeed. So what did I learn? I learned a lot of things, like anyone does going through building a startup, succeeding or failing. But there's something very interesting that I learned years later, I'd say even the past couple of years, as I've continued on with echosims. I've learned a lot about myself. And I think this is something most people can relate to. But for myself, what I learned is, at the core, with Mere Social, I was most committed to looking good and having the answer. And I'll explain why. Yes, I was committed to building a business that was going to be successful. I worked my ass off. I put in the hours. I kept the team motivated. I was running 2 businesses at the same time. I dreamt of this being successful every day. But I was more committed to looking good and having the answers. I can remember going back to a time where we'd come far enough along with building this product out, where we had a lot of the ideas in place in terms of content and whatnot, and I realized, okay, I need to go out. I think there was a book, I forget what startup book I was reading, and I recognized I should really be going out there and asking people about what they really want. I should be interviewing my customers to find out if this is something they're really willing to pay for. And what I learned after is that I was asking leading questions. I already had a vision of this sexy brand, and I had already come up with all these ideas of how the content was going to look. And I was so convinced, because I had so many people around me saying, yes, that makes sense, and logically it made sense, that when I went in to ask people if they really wanted this, I was essentially selling them. I was showing them the cute Mere Social logo. I was telling them all the problems that they already probably had and why I thought this might be a good idea. And so they said, yeah. And they weren't lying, but I wasn't asking the kind of questions that would get them to a place where they would really look deep at whether they would spend money on this or make the time for it. And I wasn't listening to see if they were going deep. And I wasn't listening to hear if these things were coming up and digging into them, because I didn't want to have to change the sexy idea and change everything that I had already started and gone way down this path on. Luckily, I salvaged echosims by getting rid of Mere Social early enough, but I could have lost both. I held on to Mere Social for a good another 1 or 2 years. And we're still in business today doing some cool stuff across North America. Music. I want to tie that same lesson into my music, because at face value you might not see it there, but for myself I see it. Again, I love music from a very young age, and I think a lot of people can relate in terms of having a passion at a younger age that they toss aside and don't pick up again later on in life, maybe when it's too late. And for me, I did that all the way through my 20s. I had music as a big dream of mine into my late teens. And once I got interested in entrepreneurship, which I was, essentially what happened with me was, as an artist, at that time in my life, I wasn't confident enough in who I was. Long story short, maybe if we're grabbing drinks later, I'll tell you more about it. But I wasn't confident enough in who I was to put my music out there that I was writing, to share it with the world and stand behind that. And so I ducked away from it. And what I realized was, in terms of being more committed to looking good and having the answers, it looks a little different in this situation, but it's the same thing. And that is that, to me, success as an artist, because I was a big dreamer, was to be a very successful artist. And there's a whole lot in between that. And I didn't have those answers. I just had this vision of way out there what that was going to look like. And so because I was afraid of looking bad and not having the answers, I said the same thing over and over again to people who knew me as an artist. when they asked, hey, how's your music going? What are you doing with your music? You should really be doing more with your music. And I'd say, oh yeah, well, sometime I will, I'm sure, but I'm super busy. Obviously, I'm running this business, and I don't have a lot of time. And that was the story I told over and over again. That wasn't the truth. Yes, I was busy, but I was still picking up the guitar in my bedroom and playing it from time to time. I still dreamt about what I could do with music. What I was afraid of was actually taking the chance and looking bad and learning and growing. Luckily, just a few years ago, I was at a weekend personal development course where, for those of you that have done stuff like this, they set requested that everybody set a goal for 1 year out, something that was uncomfortable but possible. So something that makes you squirm a little bit in your seat, so you don't want to do it, but it is possible. And so immediately, of course, for me, music is that thing that comes up. And I said, okay, 1 year, what's realistic from now? And I said, all right, I'm going to set the goal to write and record 3 country music songs. That's it. Not become a country music star, just write and record 3 country music songs and put it out there and go through the experience, see how it feels, and see where I'm going to want to go at that point. And so my language changed. Literally, that next week I went out there, and when people said, hey, how you doing? What's new? I'd say, well, I'm going to write and record 3 country music songs in the next year and see how it goes and see how it feels and see where I go from there. And it was easy. And throughout that experience, I didn't have the answers. Half the time, I didn't think I looked great. But I did it, and I took a step. And now, just this last year, those steps of just being open to learning and being an artist and growing through the experience, I came to the point where this last year, while running a business, I was able to release my first 4 singles starting in May. Every couple months, I put out another single. And as Marsha shared, I had a single picked up by CBC Country, Sirius XM. I've been doing shows, I've been doing interviews, and having a blast, not having the answers and not having to look good. And I'm telling you guys, it's a great experience. So that's my challenge to you guys, is look into your own life and consider, where are you more committed to looking good and having the answers and being safe versus moving into your discomfort to be a great beginner and be a great learner and to laugh when it looks clumsy and silly along the way. And eventually, hey, you might look great and you might have some answers. Thank you.
Awesome. Matt, thank you for sharing that. Very cool story. It's interesting how you sort of learned that lesson in reverse with your music going from your tech career. And thank you again for coming all the way from Kitchener-Waterloo to share your story with us again. So let's open it up to some Q&A for Matt. Who wants to kick us off?
Hey Matt, thanks for sharing. I just wanted to ask you a question. How are you able to balance your passions with your business and your music? How are you able to choose between the two? Because I'm sure at times you're like, business is important, but music is also important. You also mentioned being on your guitar, so just wanted to ask you about that.
Great question. I just did it. I'm a busy person. Absolutely. Running a business and doing music at the same time means that I'm super, super busy. I'm always on the go. I think one thing that's important to note is that music is very different from my business life, and it's a passion and it's a very creative process. So on one hand, it can be a release to head home and do music. On the other hand, what I just shared is very, very, very important for me, because for the longest time, that was a very nerve-wracking thought, to go out there and have to figure out who I need to get to help me to do this music thing, and wanting to not look stupid. So having the mindset of being a beginner has been huge. I've met so many people so quickly in the last year, especially. And so just being open to going through the experience, no matter how it looks, and just taking it as an experience. And so there's, funny enough, I've been able to achieve all that this year, and I look back and I go, how did I do it? Well, I was crazy busy, and I just, with whatever time I had, I moved ahead, and I got people around me that were helping with it. And now this year, I've finally come to the spot where I'm actually taking a sabbatical from echosims. Starting February 1st, I'm going to take 6 months to dive into my artistry, which is a whole new experience that I didn't have this past year. Yes, I was exploring myself as an artist, but it was just whatever time I had, I put in what I could and did my best, but I didn't have any high expectations. I hoped for the best, but that was it.
Great. So we'll do one more question, just in the interest of time.
Thank you for the presentation. Do you ever look at your country music career as a business? Does it need to break even for you? And if you can disclose any financials, that would be good.
Sorry, did you say disclose the financials? Well, I'm not going to the bank asking for a loan for this business. Great question, great point. That has been a really cool experience for me as well as an artist this past year. There's so many artists out there grinding away as artists, and so one thing I have recognized is the benefit I have of coming from a business background and a marketing background. And so that's something that I don't have to think too hard about, at least in these early stages. I know that I'm going to do more than a good enough job, and it's been very valuable to be comfortable with things on the web in terms of socials, websites, and all that stuff, and thinking about what is actually scalable and what really does matter. And the artistry is just sort of building itself along the way by being me. And the financials will not be disclosed.
Awesome, great questions. I do want to stay on time here. So Matt, thank you so much for sharing your story. If you didn't have a chance to ask your question to any of the speakers, they're all going to be sticking around afterwards. We are going to have our after party, so you're going to have a chance to ask your question in person. Matt, thank you again for sharing your story.